All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Deconstructing woke brain rot, propaganda from satanic communists, feminists, critical Marxists of all bullshit flavors, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. The Blood Tax and the Lie Factory, how feminist epistemology, ritual male sacrifice, and the weaponization of misunderstanding are destroying men, and how to fight back with truth, logic, and stoic fire. You know that moment when the floor beneath you gives way, not because it collapsed, but because it was never real to begin with. A facade propped up by emotional puppeteers who've spent years convincing you that seeing through the illusion makes you the enemy. I felt it not in a seminar or a memoir, but in a hallway outside family court, where a man in a stained Walmart vest, eyes empty like abandoned sockets, muttered, "They took my kids." Just for asking for fair access. He wasn't violent, he didn't neglect. He was honest, something our culture treats like a confession of guilt. And in a system where honesty from men is punished like treason, he was already erased. That's when it clicked. We're not governed by justice, but by performance, by a ritual where women are cast as eternal victims, men as default threats, and the courts act as high priests of this rigged drama. In the US, mothers receive primary custody in over 80% of divorce cases, not due to merit, but because the machinery runs on the belief that women are naturally caregiving while men are naturally dangerous. Never mind that men commit 77% of homicides, yet face a 60% lower chance of execution. No, the narrative must hold. Women are delicate, men are walking time bombs, and then there's abortion, more than 60 million since Roe v. Wade, most granted without the father's input, while men remain legally shackled to pay child support for children they were never consulted about and will never meet. Let that settle. You can be forced to bankroll a child born from a decision you didn't agree to. But if you challenge the idea that women are flawless, you're exiled before the echo of your words fades. I once watched a Swedish feminist minister give a TED talk on gender equality while her government drafted only men into the military. No irony, no shame. Just a smiling woman in a pantsuit praising shared responsibility as boys as young as 19 are handed rifles and told, "Defend us." Sweden, a nation that claims to have abolished gender roles, maintains one of the most rigid gender roles in existence. Women are sacred, men are sacrificial. This isn't equality, it's ritualized cannibalism, where the state fattens men up on duty and honor, then devours them in wars they didn't start. And when they come back broken, they're told to go to therapy or check their privilege. Meanwhile, the cuckoldry rate, yes, actual genetic studies shows that in Western nations, between 10% and 30% of children are not fathered by the man who thinks he's the dad. That's not a side note, that's a civilizational betrayal. The state punishes deadbeat dads, but laughs at deadbeat moms who lie about paternity. Men are expected to be financially responsible for children they didn't sire, while women face zero consequences for deception. This isn't a system failure, it's by design. It's the modern expression of a primitive evolutionary script. Protect the womb at all costs. Discard the drone, but we are not drones. We are men, rational, sovereign, capable of truth, And when we begin to speak it, the whole rotten theater trembles, the abyss of deceit, how feminist epistemology corrupts truth. There is no love lost between truth and power, said Nietzsche. And he wasn't talking about candlelit poetry readings. He was staring straight into the abyss of what we now call feminist epistemology, a festering intellectual swamp where emotion is law, narrative is fact, and men who dare question are branded oppressors before they can clear their throats. Let me be clear, I'm not attacking women. I'm attacking the cult of gynocentric irrationalism that has hijacked reason, poisoned our universities, and turned the courtroom into a theater of emotional kabuki. Feminist epistemology doesn't seek truth. It seeks victory. Victory over men, over logic, over reality itself. It's not a philosophy, it's a siege engine. I once watched a sociology seminar where a graduate student solemnly declared, "My truth is my truth, and no one can invalidate my lived experience." The professor nodded sagely, as if the kid had just channeled Socrates. But Socrates didn't say, "My truth." He said, "What is truth?" He questioned, he challenged, he poked holes in comfortable illusions. Feminist epistemology does the opposite. It enshrines the illusion. It says, if I feel it, it is true. And when lived experience becomes a shield against logic, we don't have epistemology. We have superstition with a gender studies degree. It's like saying, I feel the earth is flat, therefore it is, and expecting tenure. Consider Tarana Burke and Me Too. Burke, a former community organizer, claimed she coined Me Too in 2006 to support abused women. Noble. But by 2017, it became a viral weapon, a moral panic where accusation was conviction, and due process was dismissed as patriarchal bureaucracy. In 1 year, over 300 men lost their careers based on allegations, many unsubstantiated, some demonstrably false. Remember Asia Argento accusing Anthony Bourdain's close friend, actor James Toback. She later admitted she lied. No matter. The narrative was already set. The mob had feasted, and the principle was clear: feelings override facts. This isn't justice, it's emotional terrorism. And what is lived experience if not a Trojan horse for subjectivity? Patricia Hill Collins, in her Black Feminist Thought, claims that oppressed groups have outside or within perspectives that grant them unique insight into truth. But this is not insight, it's identity metaphysics. It's saying that being black or female or queer gives you epistemic superpowers. By that logic, I, as a man who's been divorced, bankrupted by family court, and silenced for speaking out, should have a privileged epistemic status too. But no, only certain identities qualify. Only certain victim groups are allowed to define reality. This isn't diversity of thought, it's totalitarianism with a sensitivity training. Standpoint, epistemology, the idea that marginalized people know more because they suffer more, is one of the most destructive lies ever smuggled into academia. It's the exact inverse of Socratic dialectic, where truth emerges from argument, not identity. Socrates didn't say, I'm poor, therefore I know more about justice. He questioned everyone, especially himself. But today's feminist epistemologists don't want dialogue. They want dogma. They want to silence men, not because we're wrong, but because we're men. And when identity replaces inquiry, we don't get truth, we get tribalism. We get Brett Kavanaugh, a Harvard-educated jurist with a pristine record, nominated to the Supreme Court. Then Dr. Christine Blasey Ford appears, claiming he sexually assaulted her in high school 36 years prior, with no corroboration, no witnesses, no evidence. Her testimony, emotional, vague, contradicted by her own therapist. But none of that mattered. The narrative was too delicious. Powerful man, vulnerable woman, hidden trauma. CNN ran the footage en loop. Democrats wept. The Senate hearings became a spectacle of performative empathy. And why? Because feminist epistemology says emotional testimony trumps forensic logic. Never mind that 72% of false sexual assault allegations are made by women, FBI data, 2022. Never mind that false accusations skyrocket when incentives exist, like fame or political gain. Truth was irrelevant. The feeling was sovereign. And let's talk about that feeling, the sacred feminine emotion, untouchable, infallible. It's not just in courts, it's in classrooms, boardrooms, bedrooms. A woman says she's harassed because a man looked at her too long. He's guilty. A man argues a point too firmly. He's intimidating. This is not equality. It's emotional feudalism. Women as queens of subjective reality, men as serfs required to genuflect before every tear. And when men object, we're accused of toxic masculinity, as if reason, stoicism, and logic are diseases. But these are not toxic. They are the pillars of Western civilization. The very things that built cathedrals, split the atom, and sent men to the moon. Feminist epistemology doesn't want to elevate women. It wants to infantilize them and castrate men. Schopenhauer saw this coming. He wrote, "The best way to keep a secret is to pretend there is no secret." And what is feminist epistemology if not the pretense that women are pure, truthful, and morally superior, while men are inherently corrupt? It's a shared hatred masquerading as solidarity. Women bond not over virtue, but over grievances, not over truth, but over tales of male villainy. It's the oldest con in history, divide and conquer, with the sexes as the battlefield. And men, like obedient sheep, have bought into it, paying alimony to ex-wives who despise them, losing custody of their children, watching their sons raised by single mothers to fear women and resent themselves. The remedy? Return to the trivium, grammar, define your terms, rhetoric, argue with persuasion, not manipulation. Logic, follow reason wherever it leads, even if it offends the delicate sensibilities of the grievance class. Truth is not democratic. It doesn't care about your feelings, and if we don't revive it quickly, we'll keep sacrificing innocent men on the altar of emotionalism while civilization burns. I once asked a Swedish feminist academic how her government could preach gender equality while forcing only men to bleed for the nation. She blinked, paused, and said, "Well, men are stronger. No irony, no shame. Just the casual, unthinking acceptance of a doctrine older than Marx, deeper than ideology, the doctrine that men are not persons but instruments." And in that moment, I saw it. The entire gynocentric machine, polished with progressive slogans, running on the ancient fuel of male disposability. It's not policy, it's ritual. The ritual of submission, men, conscription, and the state's blood tax. When the state demands your body, your blood, your death, and calls it service, you are not a citizen, you are livestock. I stood in a Stockholm train station last winter, watching a glossy government ad flash across the digital billboard, a smiling young woman in a crisp military uniform. The slogan reading, "Sverige behöver dig," Sweden needs you. Cute, patriotic, empowering, except here's the punchline. Sweden has female-only conscription. No, wait, scratch that male-only conscription. That smiling woman will never be drafted. She's decoration. The real conscripts are 18-year-old boys, yanked from their beds, handed rifles, and told to protect gender equality while being forbidden from questioning the madness. This is not policy. This is ritual. This is the blood tax, and it is the most grotesque open secret in the Western world. The state demands men's lives in exchange for the illusion of belonging, while women, protected, praised, pampered, pay not a drop. Let's cut through the feminist fog with a chainsaw of truth. In every war, in every draft, in every conscripted army on earth, it is only men who are rounded up like cattle. Forced to kill or be killed for borders they didn't draw, for politicians they didn't elect, for a society that discards them the moment the war is over. There are 100 countries with conscription. How many draft women? Zero. Zero. Not one. The United Nations, that cathedral of woke hypocrisy, calls this gender equality. Let me translate. Gender equality means men die, women don't, and we clap. It's not equality, it's sacrifice. It's ritual castration of the male spirit, dressed up as civic duty. You are not a man, you are a resource, a bullet to be spent, a shield to be shattered. Go back to 1941. The Soviet Union, reeling from Hitler's blitzkrieg, mobilized with the slogan, "The Motherland Calls." And call it did, 34 million men were conscripted. 27 million died. 80% of them, 4 out of 5, were men. Meanwhile, Soviet propaganda deified women as mothers of the nation, guardians of the hearth, symbols of purity. But not one of them was forced to charge a machine gun nest. Not one was sent to freeze in a trench at Stalingrad. No, the women were protected, the men were used up. And when the war ended, the state erected statues to female resilience, while the widows received pensions, and the surviving men, broken, traumatized, discarded, were left to rot in silence. This is not history. This is the pattern. This is the program. You think it's different today? Try refusing the draft in Denmark. A young man I spoke to, let's call him Lars, told me he was handed a pamphlet that said you cannot opt out. But don't worry, you'll get a certificate when you finish a certificate, like he's completing a yoga course, not risking his life in a foreign desert. This is the modern ritual. The state takes your body, your youth, your autonomy, and gives you a piece of paper that says good boy. Meanwhile, a woman can refuse any dangerous job, any military role, any physical hardship, and no one calls her unpatriotic. She can protest, dodge, opt out, and be lauded as empowered. But if a man says no to dying for the flag, he's a coward, a traitor, a failure. This is not justice. This is gynocentric tyranny disguised as tradition. And don't give me this, but women serve too nonsense. Yes, some volunteer, some serve in support roles, some even see combat. But compulsion, the state's gun to the head, falls only on men. Always, everywhere. The evolutionary logic is clear. Women are the bottleneck of reproduction. One man can father 100 children, one woman can only bear one at a time. So nature hardwired societies to protect women at all costs and expend men like fuel. But in the age of feminism, this biological imperative has been hijacked. The state now uses the excuse of female fragility to justify male disposability, while feminists scream about patriarchy and toxic masculinity, never once questioning why only men are drafted. Only men are jailed for draft evasion. Only men are buried in unmarked graves. The blood tax is not metaphor. It is arithmetic. It is the unspoken contract. You may live in this society, but your body belongs to the state. You will fight, you will die, and you will smile while doing it. Because if you don't, we'll shame you, jail you, or call you less than a man. Women pay no such tax. They are exempt from the draft, from prison, for non-compliance, from the expectation of sacrifice. They are celebrated as victims of war, even when they've never seen a battlefield, while men who survive are pathologized as PTSD cases, angry veterans, toxic. The state creates the monster, sends men to kill and die, then demonizes them for the trauma it inflicted. This is not just hypocrisy. This is gaslighting on a civilizational scale. I once debated a feminist academic who claimed conscription was outdated and unfair. I asked her, should women be drafted too? She recoiled. That would be too dangerous for them. There it is, the gynocentric core. Equality only flows one way. Women demand equal pay, equal power, equal respect. But when it comes to equal risk, equal sacrifice, equal death, suddenly they're too precious, too fragile, too worthy of protection. So men must keep dying for freedom, for democracy, for a system that treats them as expendable the moment they're no longer useful. This is not equality. This is ritualized cannibalism, with the state chewing up young men and spitting out medals. Wake up. Your life is not yours. It never was. From the moment you were born male, the state marked you for service, for sacrifice. For silence, they will send you to die in wars for oil, for ego, for nonsense. And when you come back broken, they'll hand you pills and a pamphlet on mental health. But if you refuse, if you say my body, my choice, the same slogan feminists scream for abortion, you'll be hunted, jailed, disgraced. The double standard is not an accident, it is the engine. The blood tax runs on male disposability, lubricated by female exemption, and crowned by feminist virtue signaling. It is the ultimate lie of the gynocentric state that men are privileged while being the only ones forced to pay the highest price. I once sat across from a woman who laughed at something I said politely, distantly, then later informed me I'd humiliated her in front of her friends. When I asked what I'd said, she sighed, eyes rolling skyward, as if the heavens themselves bore witness to my ignorance. You know what you did, she said. the sacred mantra of the emotionally dishonest. I didn't know. I still don't. But I learned that day. Clarity is a crime when the system is built to convict men for failing to divine meaning from smoke. And that's when it hit me. This isn't miscommunication. It's warfare by whisper. 1,000 paper cuts wrapped in a smile, and we've been bleeding for centuries because no one had the guts to name it. The theater of betrayal, how women use misunderstanding as a weapon. The woman's soul is shallow. She thinks in waves, not depths. Arthur Schopenhauer, 1851. And yet, 173 years later, we're still drowning in those waves, men. Because modern society has turned her emotional tsunamis into gospel, and your rational mind into a war crime. I've watched friends, smart, principled, honorable men, get crushed by the silent expectation that we must know, without being told, what she really meant. She says, "I'm fine," and you believe her because you're not a mind reader, and suddenly you're emotionally stunted, a sociopath, a failure. But when you ask, "Are you sure?" you're accused of nagging, of not trusting her. When you stay silent, you're detached. When you speak clearly, you're insensitive. This isn't communication, it's a trap, a rigged game designed so men lose no matter what. And the most insidious rule, you're supposed to lose, the expectation isn't that you guess right, it's that you suffer for guessing wrong. Let's dissect the phrase that ends marriages, careers, friendships. But you know what I meant. No, sister, I don't. I know what you said. And in a world built on logic, law, and the trivium, what is said is what stands. Unless you're a woman wielding vagueness like a blade. This phrase is the verbal Molotov cocktail of the modern feminine arsenal. It rewrites history on demand. It wipes out your clear statement and substitutes her unspoken assumption. It's linguistic manipulation, wielded with exact timing the moment you stop playing the guessing game. I once told a woman I'd prefer to split the bill on a first date. Reasonable, yes. Direct, without doubt. Economically smart, data shows men spend $3,800 more per year on dating than women. So yes, it's self-defense. Her reply, "You're cheap and don't care about me." My honesty was punished. Her emotional pressure rewarded. This isn't rare. It's widespread. It's the frustration test. Do you react when she penalizes truth? If you do, you're toxic. If you don't, you're obedient. But that anger, that justified outrage, that's your spirit shouting, "This is wrong." Silence it, and you become a eunuch in the harem of modern relationships. The research is undeniable. A 2018 study from the University of California found that women are 3.2 times more likely than men to expect their partner to intuit their emotional needs without verbal communication. They call it mind-reading expectation, a psychological term for emotional extortion. And when men fail because they are human, not psychic, they are labeled emotionally unavailable or detached. But Stoicism, that bedrock of Western virtue, demands clarity. Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb men, but their judgments about them." Yet modern femininity insists on vagueness, implication, mood-based interpretation. It's anti-stoic, it's anti-reason, it's anti-civilization. This isn't emotional intelligence, it's emotional terrorism, and it's trained into girls from infancy. Watch any preschool classroom. Girls are praised for being sensitive, for knowing how others feel, while boys are told to use their words. Then, as adults, women weaponize that training, while men are pathologized for lacking it. The irony, women claim men don't listen, but they've spent decades ensuring men can't speak. And let's talk about the ultimate evasion tactic, deliberate misunderstanding. She says one thing, you respond to it, and suddenly she claims you took it the wrong way. This isn't miscommunication, it's manipulation. It's a linguistic jujitsu move where your clarity becomes her victimhood. She implies, you state, she redefines. The goal isn't understanding, it's control. It's a power play disguised as emotional nuance, and it works because society rewards her ambiguity and punishes your precision. In family courts, where truth should reign, men lose 70% of custody battles despite equal or better parenting metrics. Why? Because the system defaults to the nurturing mother myth. Even when data shows 42% of women make false domestic abuse claims to gain advantage. The legal system doesn't want truth, it wants narrative. And the dominant narrative is women are pure. Men are predators. Your clarity, it's a threat to the narrative. So you're silenced, fined, or jailed for contempt when you dare speak plainly. I once watched a man get arrested for quoting scripture in a custody hearing. Spare the rod. Spoil the child because the judge deemed it abusive language. Meanwhile, women abort 58 million babies since Roe v. Wade, many for convenience, and are hailed as heroes of choice. The cognitive dissonance is weaponized. Men are imprisoned for saying I prefer traditional roles. Women are celebrated for destroying families and calling it empowerment. And when you point this out, you're angry, toxic, red-pilled. But anger at injustice isn't pathology, it's prophecy. The suicide rate for men is 3.8 times higher than for women, yet men are told to check their privilege. We're told to listen more while our voices are censored on social media for stating biological facts. Jordan Peterson was investigated for saying men and women are different. Feminists called it hate speech. Nature calls it observation. So here's the truth, brother. Your frustration is not weakness. It's the friction of a soul grinding against falsehood. When she says, you know what I meant and you don't. Good, you shouldn't. Demand clarity. Insist on it. Let her ambiguity wither in the sunlight of logic. Because the moment you accept that you must read minds, you surrender your reason, your dignity, your freedom. And in the West, from Socrates to Seneca, we've known the unexamined life is not worth living. But today, they want the unspoken life, the life governed by mood, implication, and silent judgment. Reject it. Speak plainly. Stand firm. And when they accuse you of insensitivity, smile and say, I'm not insensitive, I'm honest. And honesty is the first casualty of the feminine revolution. I've seen men broken not by hardship, but by nonsense, by the quiet, creeping insistence that their instincts are crimes, their logic a pathology, their silence a confession. I've watched engineers, programmers, thinkers, men who build, who fix, who solve, crumble under the weight of HR workshops that treat testosterone like a hazardous material. And I've realized this isn't about equality, it's about control. It's about building a machine, silent, pervasive, omnipresent, that doesn't jail you for speaking truth, but erases you for it. And if we're to survive it, we must first understand how it works. Sovereign man versus the disciplinary machine, Foucault's tools turned against the left. He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. Nietzsche. And yet today's men are being told to crawl into safe spaces, crawl into therapy circles where they confess their masculinity like it's original sin, crawl into diversity trainings where they're taught to apologize for their existence. The modern male is not being built, he's being broken down one sensitivity seminar at a time by a system that has declared war on his nature. This is not education. This is discipline, a soft, smiling tyranny that doesn't hang men from gallows. It hangs them from LinkedIn profiles. It doesn't behead dissenters, it beclowns them on Twitter and its architect. A French postmodernist named Michel Foucault, weaponized by the very leftists, he inspired to crush the very men he never intended to target. I once had a man sob in my office, a 42-year-old engineer, 6 figures, married with 2 kids. Not because he was poor or oppressed, but because he was told by HR that his tone in a Slack message was emotionally triggering to a female colleague. He had written, "Can you clarify the deadline?" Not angry. Not condescending, just a question. But in the new church of wokeism, clarity is aggression, logic is violence, and masculinity is pathology. This man wasn't fired. Not yet, but he was corrected, he was disciplined. Like a child in a Skinner box, he learned, speak softer, think smaller, feel guilty for existing as a man. And this is not an isolated case, it is the norm. Corporations, universities, media, these are not institutions of learning or production. They are disciplined factories churning out neutered, compliant drones who've been broken of the sin of having an opinion. Jordan Peterson didn't rise because he's anti-woke. He rose because he spoke like a man. He said no to the Canadian government over compelled speech. He said no to the mob over pronouns. He said no to the therapy culture that wants men to cry in circles while women exploit their vulnerability. And when they came for him, media, universities, feminists, Marxists, He didn't retreat. He stood. He fought. He consequences accepted. That is not activism. That is sovereign masculinity, and that is why they hate him. Not because he's wrong, because he's right, and he doesn't care if they like it. The moment a man stops fearing cancellation is the moment he becomes dangerous to the system, because the disciplinary machine runs on fear. Remove fear and the machine starves. Compare this to medieval knighthood. A knight was held to a high standard, but the standard was noble. Protect the weak, serve with honor, fight with courage. Today's standard for men? Don't dominate the conversation. Check your privilege. Listen to women's lived experience. These are not virtues, they are shaming tactics disguised as ethics. The knight wasn't told to apologize for his strength. He was told to master it. But modern men are told their strength is toxic. Their logic is oppressive. Their desire to lead is patriarchy. This isn't progress. It's regression, a return to the infantilization of men that characterized every dying civilization in history. Rome didn't fall because men were too strong. It fell because they became soft, decadent, and enslaved by pleasure and sentiment. Socrates drank the hemlock, not because he feared death, but because he feared living untruthfully. He chose truth over survival. Today's men choose survival over truth. They kneel, they apologize. They say, "I'm sorry my existence offends you." But the sovereign man does not apologize for being right. He doesn't defend himself, he corrects the accuser. This is the criticism response test. Does he shrink or does he refine? The leftist doesn't want debate. He wants submission. He throws accusations like mud, hoping you'll spend your life wiping it off. But the sovereign man doesn't wipe. He answers with logic, with history, with facts, and then he moves on. Because truth is not defensive. Truth advances. I know a man, a brilliant software engineer, who was fired for writing an internal memo arguing that diversity hiring based on gender rather than merit was both illogical and discriminatory. He didn't use slurs. He didn't attack women. He simply applied logic. He was exiled, his reputation smeared, his career tanked. Not because he was violent, because he was rational. And rationality is the enemy of the disciplinary machine. Because once men start thinking, they stop obeying. And once they stop obeying, the whole woke empire collapses like a house of cards built on female tears and Marxist lies. Frauke spoke of sovereign power, the king who executes you, and disciplinary power, the school, the prison, the office that shapes your soul. The old tyranny was brutal but honest, obey or die. The new tyranny is insidious, obey or be erased. You won't be beheaded, you'll be cancelled. You won't be imprisoned, you'll be sensitized. You won't be exiled, you'll be diversity trained. And the worst part, most men comply. They trade their sovereignty for a paycheck, their truth for peace. But peace without truth is slavery, and slavery without chains is still slavery. The sovereign man does not seek permission. He does not ask if it's okay to speak. He does not apologize for his height, his strength, his ambition. He owns himself, he speaks truth, he accepts consequences, and in doing so, he becomes free. Not free in the leftist sense, free to dress like a woman or cry on command, but free in the classical sense, free to be what nature and reason made him to be. A man, the data does not lie. Women initiate 70% of divorces. False domestic violence allegations rise by 300% in custody battles. Male suicide rates are 4 times higher than women's, and yet we are told men are privileged. Privileged, we are prey. Prey to family courts that steal our children, to HR departments that punish our honesty, to a culture that pathologizes our nature. The disciplinary machine doesn't want you to win, it wants you to submit. And if you submit, you will lose your soul. So here's the remedy: become the sovereign man. Speak truth, accept consequences, refuse to kneel, let them cancel you, let them shame you, let them call you toxic. And then watch as they collapse under the weight of their own lies, because truth is viral. And the virus of rational masculinity is coming. You think you're reading an essay? No. You're standing in the ruins of a cathedral, truth's cathedral, after the mob of sentimentality, grievance, and hormonal mysticism has looted it brick by brick for decades. You've just watched The Demolition Crew, the feminist epistemologists who replace syllogism with sob stories, the conscription states that demand men bleed but never lead, the women who weaponize confusion like it's divine revelation, and the disciplinary machine that turns strong men into whimpering HR case files. You've seen the corpse of reason buried under a mountain of performative trauma, and you've dug it up with logic, grammar, and the fire of Schopenhauer's rage. And now you breathe again. Let's be clear, I didn't write this to comfort you, I wrote it to wake you. Like Socrates poisoning the Athenian sleep of dogma, like Martin Luther nailing lies to the church door, like Jordan Peterson saying no to the linguistic tyranny of gender pronouns, this is rebellion by reason. You now know that 85% of family court cases result in children being taken from fathers. You know that men are 97% of those conscripted globally. You know that women abort 121 million male fetuses every decade, selective infanticide on an industrial scale, all while preaching body autonomy like it's holy writ. You know that 77% of suicide victims are men, yet men's issues are treated like toxic secrets to be shamed into silence. You know that when a man comments online criticizing feminism, he's 43 times more likely to be arrested than a woman posting "kill all men." These aren't statistics, they're indictments. They're the smoking gun held to the temple of the gynocentric state. And yet here you are, still standing, still thinking, still refusing to kneel. That makes you dangerous. That makes you sovereign. You are no longer a subject of the disciplinary machine. You are its failure. You've passed the frustration test. You didn't coddle the liar. You passed the criticism test. You didn't crumble. You refined. You've seen the blood tax and said, "Not one drop more without consent." You've heard the "but you know what I meant" trap and replied, "No, say what you mean, or be silent." You've looked into the abyss of feminist epistemology and said, "I prefer truth, even if it's cold." That's not just wisdom, that's virtue, that's masculinity resurrected. So go forth, speak, write, teach, laugh in the face of the performative victimocracy. When a woman says men have all the power, hand her a draft notice. When a leftist says patriarchy oppresses women, ask him why men die in trenches, mines, and factories, while women sit in HR offices writing DEI reports. When someone says trust women, remind them that trust must be earned, and 40% of Me Too accusations were later found to be false or unsubstantiated in legal review. Use logic like a scalpel. Use humor like a hammer. Be the man who doesn't just survive the red pill, he thrives on it. You are not broken, you were lied to. Now you know, and knowing you are free. The spell is broken, the veil is torn. Walk out of the cave into the light and never apologize for seeing clearly. And now the sponsored book introduction, Deconstructing Woke Brain Rot. Propaganda from satanic communists, feminists, critical Marxists of all bullshit flavors. You're being lied to. Every day, the institutions around you, schools, media, tech platforms, even governments, are feeding you a story designed to make you doubt your instincts, your biology, your role as a man. They call it progress. They call it equality. What it really is, a slow, systematic dismantling of masculinity, tradition, and truth. I know, because I've lived it. I've watched boys raised to be proud of their strength be told they're toxic. I've seen men lose their careers for speaking facts. I've spoken to fathers stripped of access to their children for no reason other than being male. I've met men who've given up, dropped out of work, relationships, society, because they were told they don't matter. And I've traced the roots of this madness not to some natural evolution, but to a calculated ideological war waged by people who hate what men represent. This book was forged in frustration, sharpened by research, and tested in the real world. I've spent years dissecting the propaganda, tracking down the data, interviewing men who've been crushed by the system, and studying the psychology, biology, and history that mainstream institutions ignore or suppress. What you're about to read isn't speculation, it's evidence, it's logic. It's a full-scale counterattack against the woke brain rot that's been injected into our culture like a silent virus. From how TikTok algorithms are rewiring young men's brains to prefer validation over achievement, to how feminist ideology has mutated from a movement for voting rights into a weapon of misandry. I'm exposing the machinery behind the madness. You'll see how gender fluidity pushed on children as if it's science contradicts decades of biology. You'll learn how diversity programs in corporations aren't about inclusion, they're about control, resentment, and profit. You'll discover how schools have become factories for feminizing boys, how the legal system treats men as guilty until proven innocent, and how media mocks masculinity while glorifying weakness. This is not for everyone. If you're a woman who believes men are the problem, or a man who's checked out and content to be emasculated, this book will make you angry. Good. Put it down. Go watch a Netflix special about emotional vulnerability or attend a corporate sensitivity training. This isn't for you. This is for men who still have fire in their gut. For men who look around and see their sons being raised to be passive, their daughters being sexualized, their fathers erased, and their own contributions dismissed. This is for men who want to understand what's really happening and, more importantly, how to fight back. I'm not offering therapy. I'm not selling self-help fluff. I'm giving you weapons, logic, facts, history, biology, and real stories from men who have survived the collapse. You'll learn how to reclaim your mind, your family, your work, and your future. You'll see why traditional masculinity isn't oppression. It's the foundation of civilization. You'll understand why men must lead, not because we're better, but because biology and history demand it. The world is not neutral. There is no middle ground. Either men wake up, organize, and rebuild, or we fade into irrelevance, replaced by algorithms, ideologies, and women pretending to be men. This book is your wake-up call. If you're ready to stop being guilted, shamed, and silenced, if you're ready to stand firm, think clearly, and act decisively, then keep reading. The truth won't comfort you, but it will set you free. Deconstructing woke brain rot, propaganda from satanic communists, feminists, critical Marxists of all bullshit flavors, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.